We're all aware of the concept of a Trinity wanker. I'm sure everyone in this room has had some experience weathering the accusations after telling a friend or family member that you go or intend to go to this university. And even though we're all probably aware of the sort of character that comes to mind when I say that phrase, I'd like to paint us all a picture of who most Irish people think when they think of that wanker from Trinity. The Trinity wanker studies something very practical, like philosophy or medieval history. Their wardrobe is full of the essentials: signet ring, corduroy blazer, and Leinster scarf. They have a small place in San Moritz as of late and have spent at least a month every summer in Quinto del Lago, or QDL as they like to call it. While on campus, they frequent the smokers' bench outside Kinsella Hall, but never actually inside Kinsella Hall. And after college, they'll use their degree, and of course no help from their father, to get a competitive job in KPMG. But the thesis of this speech, ladies and gentlemen, is that this character is dead. They have been killed by what I would like to call the New Age Trinity wanker. We've all probably run into one of them. Maybe you met him at the PAV, giving his completely unique take on why Fianna Fáil and or Fine Gael is bad while he fidgets with his Gonzaga class ring. Or maybe you liked her Sheen Hall on TikTok and then saw her the next day putting up posters for a Workers' Party symposium on the ills of late-stage capitalism. That's right, folks, Trinity has gone woke. But how, for the first time since 1592, have the classic, beloved students of Trinity College Dublin been usurped? Well, we've just witnessed the emergence of a generation raised on a healthy diet of TLDR daily briefings and /politics, who have all done multiple tours of duty in too many comment sections. And where does this generation go once they finish secondary school? PPES. The emergence of politics and social media has altered the lives of every student on this campus. And the worst part? When you try to tell your accusers, actually no, Trinity is a very forward-thinking, progressive community with a serious desire to enact change in our lives and society, no one is going to believe you. Thanks very much.
Thank you. And are there any objections to my signing these minutes as true and accurate account of the last public business meeting? Then I shall duly sign. I should now like to call upon the auditor to introduce the standing orders for this evening.
Standing orders are speeches for all speakers will be 7 minutes in length. The first and the 6th minute you'll hear the spell, and then twice when your turn is up. Now, audience participation is, as ever, very much encouraged. We won't be doing floor speeches this evening, but we will promote call-outs, so you can shout "hear, hear" if you agree with something, or "shame" if you disagree with something. The speakers, as well as the audience, are allowed and encouraged to offer POIs, which are points of information or questions that you can ask anyone who's speaking in between the first and the 6th minutes, in the middle of their speech. Of course, the speaker doesn't have to take them, but it's nice if they do. If they do take your POI, please keep it to 15 seconds or else you'll get dinged as well. And our AV team have very politely asked all speakers to not bang on the ballot box while they are making their impassioned speeches for the sake of the microphone. You can sort of like drum it, but they appreciate that. So those are the standing orders for this evening, so back to you guys.
Thank you. The question for the House this evening is, this House would ban politics from social media. And I should now like to call upon the first speaker to propose the motion to the House, Donal Walsh.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and thanks for once again having me back in front of you and allowing me to get out of the dark, dingy confines of Phil Convo, where it's quite shameful, where I'm slaving away, pouring over your wine glasses. Thanks for having me back. So this motion is ultimately, I believe, about truth and about how truthful social media can be and how truthful politics on social media can be. So what is politics? What is this grand notion we are talking about? I think a generally accepted notion of politics would be any sort of system that goes towards making decisions in groups. Be this towards status within the groups, who's the auditor, who's the president, who's the Taoiseach, resources, how we use the resources of the group or the actions of the group. This happens on both a large and a small scale. There's very obvious ones about who becomes the president of the US, the leader of the free world as it was, or who becomes the OCM in pool sock or something like that. There's two extremes of politics, and to examine that we have to examine the full spectrum. So can we ban politics from social media in its entirety? Well, it's going to be kind of hard to ban politics for the small stuff. Like, if there's a post up on Pool Sock promoting one person as this great pool player, the best pool player to ever walk through the halls of Trinity College, this could be false. We can't really decide if this is political or not. Who's going to be sitting in Instagram's headquarters going through this, going, that Pool Sock post was inherently political, get that off my page? It's not going to happen. It's simply not feasible to ban politics at the small scale. So can we ban politics on the medium scales in our local county councils and something like that? Well, who's to say if a local councillor goes down to the under-12s football game to support their kids and posts that on social media? Are they just taking pride in little Timmy finally scoring his first goal and not falling flat in his face? Or is he running himself up for re-election? It's impossible to decipher. It's one of those things that's never going to be clear-cut. So even on the medium scale, it's going to be quite hard to determine, is a post political or is it not? But then surely on the grand scale, the large scale, the leader of the free world, or Ireland as we like to call it, surely deciding that is going to be way easier. Well, did Catherine Connolly post that video of her doing keepy uppies because she was auditioning for the Sunday League? I hear they're opening a new Sunday League in Phoenix Park. Or did she want to become president? Like, talk to any lawyer and they'll come up with something. You know, there's enough of them in here, enough Trinity wankers in here pretending to be lawyers to cast doubt on anything. Give them enough time. So it's not really going to be feasible to ban politics in its entirety from social media. But when did what is possible ever concern us? It's much more fun to just suppose something. So let's suppose this imaginary world where Robin Williams pops out of an Arabian lamp that you rub as a blue genie and says, I can ban politics from social media. Should we? I believe we should. Why? Because social media is a resource. It is a resource that anyone can use to talk to other people, to advertise something, to promote something, to just spit some shit out there. It is a decentralized resource. While companies do own the platforms and do own the algorithms that promote stuff, they don't own what we talk about on them. They don't own how we communicate on them. I don't think any social media algorithm decided that 6'7" was going to become the funniest thing of 2025. I think that was the idiots that are on social media decided that, because it is a resource that we hold in common to decide what is funny and what is not. There's these microcosms of power on social media that Owen has already hit on, the r/politics deciding the new trends, or the Shein Instagram community deciding clothes that should come into fashion. Social media has allowed us to decentralize and extrapolate away from the traditional power brokers in society into these little groups. The LawSock Instagram page and who gets featured on it the most now decides who becomes the next chair of LawSock, rather than what would happen 20, 30 years ago where the big newspapers on Trinity campus decided the agenda. This happens both on the small, medium, and the large scale as well. So why is this bad? Well, any resource that gets held in common falls foul to self-interest of those using it. For example, I can now go on Instagram, spurt out some bollocks about whatever I want to, and it might be believed or not, I could create an Instagram page called Resign Sean Tim O'Leary, and who knows, it might be an entirely factual or it might not be. I quite simply don't know, because there's nothing that realistically holds me to account in this. If UT were to go up and blather some lies, eventually they would get held to account, or we would stop trusting them and we'd stop reading UT. But if there's some Instagram page or 1,000 Instagram pages popping up blathering rumors, it's not doable to regulate those for the reasons we discussed earlier. This is both true for individuals and corporations. Any little corporation or big corporation can just spread enough muck on the wall and eventually some will stick. It's not feasible for there to be a regulator. And while I can already hear the libertarians in the audience screaming from the back, what about the free market? The free market isn't going to regulate social media, tragically, because the free market holds this resource in common as much as those using it. It is a unique resource where the people and the interactions the people have are the resource rather than the platform. It's like if we all decided to gather in a field and chat. The resource is the people chatting, not the field. If we get fed up with the fields because they're regulating what we're chatting about, just feck off to another field or a pub or anything like that. And it is these microcosms of power that allow the truth to become so malleable in this day and age and so malleable on social media. Now, I hope I don't have to point out why malleable truth and politics don't go hand in hand. But just in case there's someone who thinks, sure, lion's grey crack, why not do that in government? Why is it bad? Well, because A, it breaks down trust in the government, B, it's going to lead to some idiot getting elected somewhere important. Not saying anything. And C, it's just going to lead to a society where you can't believe or can't put trust in anything. You don't know what's going on, you don't know who to trust, you don't know what to trust. You're running around like a scared chicken pretending maybe we know what's going on, maybe we don't. So for these reasons, if we had that magical genie who would ban social media for us, we should ban politics from social media. Thank you.
Thank you to the speaker for the fine speech. I'd now like to call upon Keaton Peer to continue the debate.
When I was first writing this speech, I was genuinely curious to see what percentage of my social media feed is politics or politics adjacent. And I'm not even trying to make a joke here, it's genuinely disgraceful of me. But out of the 20 Instagram reels I scrolled through, 12 of them were Charlie Kirk memes. 4 of them were the same reel about stealing APAC money to buy geek bars. And the other 4 were just so abhorrent that I may never be considered for a job if I were to describe them out loud. But even though I could wake up any day now to hashtag Keaton Peers over party trending on Twitter, I would much prefer a world where my engagement with politics is on a public domain, like social media. Not because it holds me accountable, clearly that's not working, but because to have my political socialization and knowledge confined to an existing inner scope in a physical corral would limit myself and the people around me. Limiting discourse is what breeds oblivion and ignorance, and it's why 30 years ago, I didn't know this was happening, was a valid excuse for inaction. So let's look at the dire world that the proposition brings before you. A world where understanding political nuance is a privilege reserved for only those who can afford it. A world where grassroots movements struggle to mobilize and resonate with larger audiences. A world without Gavin Newsom and Luigi Mangione thirst edits. Not only is opportunity restricted, but there's an equally significant infringement on my freedom to shamelessly have a saved collection on TikTok titled "Punish Me, Mr. Kennedy." Seriously, people, this is what makes the World Wide Web go around, and I will not stand for its erasure because silence is complicity. I think banning politics from social media is virtually impossible because the relationship between the two are in many ways symbiotic and often intertwined. My biggest question is, where do we draw the line between politics and something that's political? I'm not referring to discussion around a candidate or a conflict happening overseas. I'm referring to the day-to-day interactions we have. The music we listen to, the clothes we wear, the jobs we work, our interests, passions, and lives are structured by politics. And to develop a better understanding of how these narratives, identities, and systems came to be, we must engage in discourse, which so often occurs through the medium of social media. Everything has a political implication and therefore invites a political response. To quote an iconic moment in both politics and social media, "You think you just fell out of a coconut tree? You exist in the context of all in which you've lived and what came before you." You know, think about Sydney Sweeney's "Genes are passed on from parents to offspring" in the American Eagle ad. Sure, it's a fucking pants ad, yet it was still analyzed and compared to Nazism, because the implication of hiring a blonde-haired, blue-eyed white girl to deliver a message of superiority amidst an aggressively nationalist and nativist administration has nothing to do with denim and everything to do with DNA. That is an inherently political maneuver by that company and actress, none of which would have been understood or at least acknowledged at the same scale if politics were absent from social media. And in case you aren't buying that example, I'd like to sell you more by analyze something a bit more obscure. I stumbled upon a video the other day of a creator on TikTok making the claim that all art is political. And his comments were flooded with photos of a man I love very much named John Pork. If you aren't familiar, John Pork is an anthropomorphic pig man who's been turned into some sort of internet joke. And it's really not funny, guys. I don't think you should be laughing because we're still investigating his disappearance. It's a dire matter. But this comment section was full of people posting John Pork asking, is this art political? And ironically, by using various memes to mobilize against the claim that all art is political, they have in turn created an artistic political movement. Pork-litical, if you will. So now that we've established that everything on social media can be and is political, from jeans to John, I'll illustrate two main arguments as to why banning politics is not only unfeasible, but harmful to wider society. Because we are unable to separate politics from social media, we create a digital political paradox. By banning politics from social media, by creating an imposed and enforced silence on such a massive platform, that decision to ban politics from social media makes social media political. And to illustrate this better, here's an analogy that may help you understand. Let's say you've been hooking up with a guy, and despite multiple attempts, the lad just can't seem to get it up. So he tells you, let's just not have sex. And in the awkward silence of your single bed, or for the freaks on Tringe, the arts block stairwell, you're thinking, am I ugly? Is he gay? Should I leave? So his decision to not talk about it will establish an anticipated tension that makes the idea of sex now taboo, even in its silence. The point is, we cannot dissolve discussion without simultaneously creating it. If there isn't room for anything political, then there isn't room for anything, period. And sure, at its worst, social media can facilitate polarization, misinformation, etc. But at its best, it can mobilize millions to participate in politics and elect leaders like Zoran Mamdani and Catherine Connolly. It can incentivize debate and critical reflection of our own values. It can introduce us to perspectives and concepts we would never hear in our real-life socialization. Social media is a tool, it is a resource, and the existence of harm should not hinder the good it brings, because social media is not the perpetrator, it is the bad actors. And I'm not just talking about Sydney Sweeney this time, but the humans behind this harm. This brings me to my second argument. When we frame the discussion that social media is the problem, we shift the blame from creator to consumer. We absolve powerful people and subjugate accountability solely to the powerless. So maybe instead of banning politics from social media, we need to denounce people who build and exploit social media infrastructures for their own gain. We need to call out corporations like Meta, owned by people like Mark Zuckerberg, who impose policies and roll back guidelines that allow misinformation to become so prevalent in our feeds. People like Elon Musk, who design algorithms with the intention to polarize because it brings him more power and more profit at the expense of its users. People like Donald Trump and Benjamin Netanyahu, who exploit their positions of power to indoctrinate people into beliefs rooted in hatred. That is not a flaw of social media. That is a product of greed. So I urge you to acknowledge this distinction. I urge you to engage in discourse online, and I urge you to not pass this motion. Thank you very much.
Thanks to the speaker for the fine speech. I'd like to call now Maeve Quinn to continue.
I'm sure my fellow members of the proposition will make well-informed, academically driven arguments, perhaps discussing algorithms are just deliberately siloing extremist ideologies into echo chambers and feedback loops that lead to polarization and fractures across the political world. Or maybe about how Meta has stolen all your data, sold it to foreign intelligence services, and who then profile the minutiae of your personality, targeting you with hyper-personal ads to get you to vote a certain way. Maybe they'll talk about how social media has diluted effective journalism, blurring the lines between truth and lies without verifiable fact-checking. all of which are very important points. I, however, posit the greatest and most detrimental impact of politics being on social media is that it has made it dumb. My first point is on how politicians have changed their behaviour once they go on social media. When politics seek to fit itself inside the mould of social media, it transforms from policy making to a performance, from governments to entertainment. Debates are no longer about discussing the matters at hand at length, instead of picking apart the nuances of an issue, but rather getting a funny 15-second clip. I mean, look at the film. When was the last time they had a joke without a long-winded sex joke designed to be clipped and not re-uploaded to Reels? And that's fine when it comes to inconsequential student debates. But when it's Keir Starmer cracking Love Island jokes at PMQs, or Ivana Bacik holding up a photo of JD Vance, or Anthony Albanese using a 6-7 joke, it lowers the calibre of government scrutiny over government behaviour or legislation, and leading to a lower quality of governance. The focus no longer becomes the issues, which in those examples was the Partygate scandal, the deportation of a Norwegian tourist, and the Australian government's climate policy, and instead the focus and reaction becomes, haha, funny. This punch and duty politics is done as a promotion for the individual of the party rather than effective politics, and shifts the conversation away from real actual politics. The algorithms of social media feed off interaction and attention, and leads to clicks being prioritised over genuine engagement. We've entered an era of vox pops in politics. This has led to inconsequential motions being discussed in parliaments rather than bills or policy or legislation, for the appeasement of a few likes online rather than effective progress or change. Polsock went to the Dáil last week, where we saw speakers discussing National Science Week, which is a social science which is very close to my heart. And we saw a handful of TDs delivering the same speech one after another to an empty room, all of which were uploaded to social media as evidence that they are making a difference. Who cares? So nothing came for that hour except from self-congratulatory tweet and Instagram story. Social media has caused politicians to care more about proving that they have done something rather than actually doing something. It's the same thing that happened when we switched from radio to TV. It was no longer about who articulated their arguments the best or who had the strongest policies, but who looked the fittest. And now it's just about who can play the algorithm to get on the most feeds, and also who looks the fittest. Now, enough complaining about politicians. And if you want to do that, come to Paul Sock's Coffee Hour every week. Social media has also changed how we interact with politics. It's changed the way we talk. I mean, I can't emphasise how hard it was to write this speech without saying low-key or I fear. But when it comes to politics, we should extend our discourse beyond the framework we have online. Politics' interaction has also impacted the way general public engage. People are constantly exposed to political content where it gives the appearance of engaging in discourse and thinking about the issue, but it is actually just encouraged a shallow exploration of complex topics when giving them the impression they are incredibly well informed. This complex discussion can occur within the confines of a 240 character tweet. We all know the person in your tutorial who talks with this grandiose authority about political issues as if every sentence they've said deserves your full attention, when they're talking exclusively in tweets that you saw on your For You page 3 days ago. Don't say you read an article, I saw the TikTok. And the biggest issue is, people don't realise this. They think Twitter and TikTok and Instagram is all there is and never look deeper. It's sort of slacktivism. Social media has promoted a lack of genuine engagement in politics. Yes, more people may be aware, but this awareness means nothing if what they're engaging with is manufactured. How many conversations about the presidential election involved Catherine Connolly's keepy-uppy skills? How many of your friends cared that Charlie XCX deemed Kamala as brat? When was the last time someone read a manifesto? The way social media treats politicians is also a backward step. We're either deifying them, damning them, or neutering them. This deification is where social media puts a politician on such a high pedestal that they become immune to any criticism. They create a character that extends beyond the reality of politicians. They become a media personality rather than a public servant. The damnation is the opposite. People are condemned beyond saving. They're put in polarised echo chambers and refuse to engage those who disagree and never consider cooperation or concessions.
Do you not think that the video of Catherine Connolly doing keepy-uppies would have gotten a lot of people engaged who wouldn't otherwise have?
But I think what they care about is the keepy-uppies. I think sometimes people just say, look at that, that's so funny, and they don't actually go beyond that. And I think if it did go beyond that, I think it would be important. I think it'd be more interesting, a video of Catherine Connolly, I don't know, talking about I guess presidents have policies, but something like that would be more important. The other instances is where politicians are neutered, where social media takes dangerous individuals and makes them into a joke, so they appear as less of a threat, and people don't acknowledge the true power these politicians have and don't act. Boris Johnson's had edits of him saying blue passports and vegan sausage rolls when he was negotiating Brexit. TikToks of Trump dancing or the baby Vance meme. These are powerful people with immense responsibility, and painting them in this ridiculous light strips them of this ability to be seen as powerful actors. And without this ability to recognise this, we can't try to change it. For research purposes, I downloaded TikTok and was immediately confronted with the Gordon Brown, Tony Blair edit with the caption, "They're so doomer, toxic Yowie car, it's crazy." These are the men who launched the UK's invasion of Iraq. Politics shapes every aspect of our life. Sure, the drama of who said what about who is interesting, but it takes the focus away from educational policy, healthcare reform, or potholes in the roads, which is what is actually important. What goes on over in Leinster House or Westminster can be matters of life and death, domestic and foreign policy, and instead they're doing the renegade. This treatment of politics as a joke hides something sinister, an apathy to serious politics and a transformation into entertainment. I hope I've made a sufficient case for why politics should be kept off social media, and if not, why you should at least join Polsock for the low price of €2. Thank you and support the proposition.
Thank you to the speaker for this fine speech. I'd like to call on Varachi Agrawal.
Before I start my speech here today, I want to say I'm particularly excited to be speaking today, not only because we're collabing with our lovely friends from Polsock, woo, okay, but also because I'm going to use this as an opportunity to demystify my image as someone who is defined by economics and only thinks about money and bonds, because people forget I'm also a political science student. So obviously, I spend a lot of time thinking of the most important issues that concern humanity and all of the problems that pervade our daily life. And then I listen to my professors talk about the definition of politics. Okay, surely a theoretical understanding of our institutions is important, is what I was thinking in the first week of first year. Yep, start from the basics. By the time we get to week 6, we're going to be talking about wars, we're going to be talking about the housing crisis. By week 6, we were talking about the difference between politics and political science. Okay, cool. Week 12 was, why does politics exist? Okay, cool. First week of second year, can anyone guess? What is politics? But look, this isn't me complaining. I think I'm being a bit unfair. Because I think somewhere in between week 6 and week 113, I understood why we're actually doing this, and it's because politics, by its very nature, incredibly vague and intertwined in the fabrics of human life. The way in which we interact, the way we organize our communities, communicate, choose our actions is all politics, and politics defines and colors all of these things, like Donald the philosopher said. But the thing he missed is that the line between the small and medium and large scale is all relative. So to me, there's politics in the emojis that people have in their Instagram bios, and there's politics in the get ready with me's of little girls in New York, and in the tweets of people complaining about the Lewis. And to get rid of this is to inherently get rid of everything that underpins our status quo. But okay, maybe Polsock thinks that I'm being a bit unfair to the motion. I asked a highly reputed member of committee on Polsock what politics was, because surely the Trinity College Dublin Political Society knows. And a Miss Maeve Rose Solomon Quinn replied, She said, and then she didn't say anything. So I've had to think by myself. So let's think of a traditional conception of politics, a lot of what's already been brought up, like parliament, senates, politicians, elections, all that kind of stuff. Let's say we get rid of all of this. No more Zoran Mondani edits on my For You page. No more memes of Simon Harris on my Instagram. No threads discussing conflicts on Twitter. Nothing. But also, actually, on the topic of Maeve Rose Solomon Quinn, I think her point on TDs and politicians changing their political style to appease their voter base, I think this is just a subsection of things that have existed since politics started, which is a clever political strategy to cater to your voter base. We were in the same lecture together when we were discussing this, but whatever. Okay, but anyways, I think I'm going to bring up some actual substantial arguments why this ban just doesn't work and will result in a substantially worse world. So When you ban politics, you're putting the entire burden of reporting on traditional media. So even if you exclude the possibility of malicious intent or corruption, which does definitely exist in most journals or newspapers around the world, even if it's to a small extent, these corporations have to prioritize certain news stories over others, just due to the abundance and volume of things that happen in our world, right? And so this obviously means that some news stories just go unreported or underreported. Even the stories that are reported on, they aren't engaged with as much because attention spans have gotten so much smaller. So nuanced analysis is now only read by people who have an interest in politics, in academics, intellectual elites, etc. And these people aren't at risk of polarization on either sides of the house, right? So what you have is not only lower political engagement, but also just less knowledge and awareness on political issues. So imagine the worst person you know from film studies or Bess who claims that politics doesn't affect their life and says, why can't people just get along, before leaning in to make out with you and multiply and multiply that by 1 billion people. That's the general population that you have on side proposition. They internalize it, so even if they don't care, so when people are subconsciously surrounded by political discourse and rhetoric, they internalize it. So even if they don't care, at least they know that sexism is a thing, that the presidential election is happening, that there's wars happening. It makes people just a little less completely out of touch, and this can definitely snowball into complete apoliticization and a lack of voter turnout in the long run. And this directly replies to what Second Pop said on how some awareness is not, doesn't actually amount to anything. Maybe this is true, but we also think apoliticization is a lot worse, because in the long run, you just get democratic backsliding if you have lower voter turnout in every single political election going forward. The second thing I don't agree with is that polarization dissipates or mitigates on your side, because I think it's just because you guys are too busy floating between your philosophy and sociology lectures on ethics and gender, but your head is too far up in the clouds. But to claim that polarization and populism and radicalization just disappear is basically saying if I close my eyes, I won't have any assignments, which I know for a fact both of these two do on a daily basis. So, so to illustrate my point, let's do a thought experiment. Who here has broken a rule? Yeah. Who here has eaten in lectures, snuck drink into T-ball? Who stole something on Depop and then forgot to post it and then gotten sued, so they photoshopped a postage stamp to show they mailed it 10 days ago and then appealed the loss and then gone to court? What I'm trying to say is that people find alternative ways to do things they want and believe in a tale as old as time. So humans are intrinsically defined by risk-taking and stubbornness and creatively finding ways to realize their aims and ambitions. And sometimes they use this for bad motives, to spread hate and ideology and inflammatory rhetorics. So in your world, people who feel deeply and strongly about certain politics and probably have radical or extremist thoughts won't automatically be discouraged because they can no longer say or articulate their thoughts on social media. They'll just find other avenues, but this time they're unregulated and unmonitored by the government. And so therefore, it's a lot more dangerous and it gains a lot more legitimacy because they're actually doing this from the grassroots, and they're actually building communities rather than just being a troll online that people can reply to and people can kind of disprove in the process. Opposed, guys. Yeah.
Thank you very much for the great speaker. I now call on Jose.
As you may or may not be able to tell in the 13 words in this sentence, I am not Irish. So when Ben asked me to do this debate, my question was as to whether or not this was a good idea for someone with an American accent to talk about politics. So I apologize if my presence is triggering for any of you. Anyone who doesn't F with me is just gonna have to deal with it for the next 6 minutes. And I'm gonna talk about American politics primarily because that's what I'm experienced with. So first thing to do then, what does a world without politics actually look like? So I think that everyone is wrong. I think everyone is wrong when they say I think everyone is wrong when they say a world where politics does a world in which social media doesn't have politics, doesn't exist, cannot exist, because I think that is perfectly possible in China. And so I would encourage you all to go on Weibo or like Rednote or WeChat and let me know what you guys think. If you guys need Chinese tutoring lessons, just let me know. So anyways, I think in a world where people don't engage with politics on social media, people would do it in traditional news outlets. Secondly then, I want to address some of the arguments made by opposition bench. So opposition wants to say that social media helps facilitate discourse. But my answer to that challenge is that political discourse wasn't invented when Facebook or Meta or, I don't know, Twitter was invented. I will give everyone 10 euros in this chamber I will bet everyone 10 euros that everyone's parents, if not their grandparents, are equally, if not more politically engaged with them. And this is because politics has always been a central part of our life, and we will always be engaged with it. I want to flip opposition's argument then. I would say that more and more people are politically disengaged right now because everyone's reducing politics to Candace Owens speculating as to whether or not Brigitte Macron is trans or whether or not we fell out of our coconut tree. And that is why the youth feel disconnected with social media. We think that politics ought to be banned. Opposition also says that instead of banning social media, we should regulate it. But that is the exact stance of inaction because guess who was at Trump's inauguration, guys? Yeah, that's right. Mark Zuckerberg and Elon Musk and Joe Rogan. So it is always impossible to regulate social media because those who control it are always play buddy-buddy with the government. The only way to remedy the situation is then to ban it. Thirdly then, I want to present my argument, and the thesis of my speech is quite simple. It is that the constant misinformation when it comes to political discourse does nothing but encourage polarization, but more importantly, just makes us all feel really shit. From my 2 months here, I've realized that politics in Ireland is very different from the rest of the world, because I doubt that the people of China or Japan or even America are lucky enough to watch their president play keepy uppies, or watching their ex-president being sent off with his cute Burmese mountain dogs, or watching the Healy Raid compilations on YouTube. No. Instead of that, most people's feed across the world consists of people trying to one-up each other in their stupidity when it comes to politics. From libs of TikTok to Laura Loomer to Nancy Mace to Matt Walsh, the online media space has been infiltrated with people who seem like they struggled to graduate from high school. Why is that then? I think that social media platforms encourage this kind of behavior. Those who scream and shout and cry the loudest are the ones who get the most likes, the most reposts, the most engagement. The result of this encouragement is the destruction of basic human decency on social media as people call each other Nazis and pedophiles, and the encouragement of this behavior ought not to be promoted. This is why you see a certain somebody talk about immigrants eating cats and dogs during the presidential debate, because they know that that's what's going to get them the most engagement on social media, not what is the best for people. But anyways, if anyone in Chamber is like me and has a 10-hour screen time, you would know that this past week hasn't been the greatest week for Donald Trump. The issue is that from my doom scrolling on Twitter, I can't really tell who or what even Bubba is, what Donald Trump did to Bubba, or why Putin has photos of Donald Trump and Bubba. So I would say that no, social media does not facilitate discourse, it only spreads misinformation. Now, aside from the fact that echo chambers on social media platforms promote extremist and populist worldviews, which my partners have already talked about, social media is also terrible for our mental health. Because every single time I click onto Twitter or Instagram or YouTube expecting a fun brain rot session, I end up doom scrolling. And every single time I click onto social media, I come out of it feeling worse about the world than before I clicked onto it. Yes? No, because brain rot makes me happy. I love brain rot. So boomers like, I don't know, Hazel got TV or stand-up comedy as a refuge from day-to-day life. But for us younger people, it has been replaced with memes that 12-year-olds laugh at. From, 6-7 memes to lions and lionesses to Group 7. I take refuge in YouTube Shorts like a fine cigar on a rainy day. And I want laughter, and I expect entertainment when I go on YouTube. And not to see that the political institutions that we rely on in our day-to-day life being infiltrated by pundits and parroters. News about doom and destruction belongs to the news, not the place I feel entertainment. When I am on social media, I would rather be seeing Cynthia Erivo, I Show Speed reaction gifs rather than Charlie Kirk ones. So here's why you should care about this argument. It may be true that some people get polarized, some people become more brainwashed, and it may be true that they're more Trinity winkers than were before. But that is not as important as the way that we all engage with social media, because those who have become extreme and those who have become polarized are few and far between. But we all feel the negative space. We all feel the negativity when it comes to social media and politics. And so I think that we ought to ban politics from social media. We think that social media without politics is far better. So for all the above reasons, this motion must stand.
To the Speaker for the fine speech. I now call on Owen Conley to continue the debate.
If we were to ban social media, it leaves our political discourse in the hands of people currently in the media. To quote one of them, Iran and Qatar have come up with a disinformation campaign that they are running through TikTok and Instagram that is massive. If you are a young person, you are opening up your phone, and all you see is dead Gaza baby, dead Gaza baby, dead Gaza baby, Diddy, dead Gaza baby, dead Gaza baby. Those are the words were spoken about a month and a half ago by Van Jones, who's a senior CNN host on Real Time with Bill Maher. He has since apologized, fortunately, though I probably wouldn't have made a punchline and a political point about children being murdered, being some kind of psyop. But hey, what do I know? I could never be a journalist. I used to work for the University Times. Chair, fellow speakers, friends, for all the flaws and dangers of social media, it has democratized information and news, and I want to vomit already from how much I sound like Elon Musk there, but to a degree, I believe it is true. And it damages a monopoly held by those who think that dead children are a footnote and a punchline, and I believe its benefits are great enough to necessitate defeating this motion. The question before us tonight is one close to my heart. It was someone who will never shut up about politics online, for indeed, how else would I use the stupidly specific knowledge I have amassed? But it is not for me to decide, merely to conclude this discussion. It is on you, dear audience members, to consider who it is you believe this evening. Do you side with the philosophy and math student, the PPES student, and the philosophy student? Or do you side with the PPES student, the PPES student, and the PPES student? Which way, Western student, which way? So to this end, what have we heard so far? To respond to a couple things. I think we get a very good points raised by Maeve on this idea that it does change politicians' behavior. Yeah, a lot of cringe things, but I think similarly it also amasses a lot of scrutiny politicians wouldn't be getting otherwise. The Democrats have proved themselves absolute chickens in the United States, and I don't think established media would have been critiquing them so much. They'd be saying, oh, finally, the two parties came together. You to stand united and pass the budget for the fascists. But because of social media, we get a lot more people very, very angry at them. And social media can generate bad anger, but sometimes you kind of got to get angry at people. And then on this idea that Johnson and Trump and others play to social media. Mainstream media created Donald Trump, they created Boris Johnson, they created many monsters before them. Johnson went out in his pajamas with a bunch of tea to actual journalists, and they didn't ask him a single critical question after he had compared Muslim women to letterboxes. Social media doesn't stop us from being critical. Media's done that all the time. Yes, Redford?
Is Boris Johnson still preferable to Reform UK and other more modern politicians that have been created by social media?
Nigel Farage is created by the establishment media. Sky News have him on practically every fucking week, and they never ask him a single critical question. So I agree it obviously does feed into him, but mainstream media is shit as well. And I know I keep saying, drink every time I say mainstream and establishment in this speech. I'm sorry, really, is a Trinity wanker thing. But it's true in this case. To offer an answer, by the way, to Prachi's question on what is politics, in the wise words of Professor Peter Stone, politics is the process of figuring out how we're going to live together. The girls that get it. Cool. So, why must this motion fall? I could go on a long ramble about absolute importance of free speech, whatever. like, that's also an important one, but I think the point I'm making is ultimately we cannot trust the alternative. Social media can undoubtedly do harm through its handling of politics. The Brexit referendum took advantage of social media and personal data to target demobilized voters with manipulative disinformation to secure their result. It has been used to drive political division in the United States as well, and Facebook's inability to regulate it in Myanmar, given they had no translators for the entirety of Myanmar, allowed it to spread hate and drove people to mob violence and the ethnic cleansing of the Rohingya people. But since when is this new? Editing the publication of a telegram in a newspaper in the 1870s helped start the Franco-Prussian War. Shout out Otto von Bismarck. What a guy. Fox News has been scaring white grandparents since 1996, and genocides from the Holocaust to Rwanda utilized the radio as a weapon to spread hatred and coordinate mass murder. Any communication that has ever brought us closer together has facilitated both great good and great evil. Social media, of course, I would agree, is to an extent a different beast. The way it has data, the way it intertwines the content you consume with your daily life, your socializing, there is something more. But I'd agree it could have a greater potential for manipulation, but all the same, in a different way, I think it's more independent than other media. I do not believe that our generation in the United States would be as critical as of Israel were it not for social media, because the established, moneyed, and power interests that control the vast majority of the media there, whether they be liberal or conservative, don't question shit about them, and they haven't done it for decades. The media, yep.
If CNN doesn't report on Israel and Palestine, wouldn't Al Jazeera or any other...
You think the average American person is going to tune into something called Al Jazeera? Very important media company, respect a lot of the work. They have laid down their fucking lives, and I respect them for it. They would not have been tuned into. I'm sorry. I wish they would. And you know how Al Jazeera does get platformed? Social media. It is why so many people know about their journalists that have died, because the US has not acknowledged any of them. They didn't give them any awards. Dozens of them have been murdered. And their work we only know of because of social media. Think to yourself, how many journalists do you think you've seen because you've been seeing them in actual mainstream things or because of social media? Now, obviously, this is partly useless counterfactual, because maybe in the other world you would have been reading the newspapers and reading about them, but as I've established, they've been silent. They've been complicit. Social media has many problems, but I believe it represents at least some progress in political discourse that wasn't previously possible. The rise of anti-establishment politics can bring both good political movements and very bad ones. But I think the good is more unique, because evil has been helped by established interests throughout history, while good hasn't had such an easy time. Elite interests supported fascism in the 1920s and 30s. They created personalities like Trump and Johnson. Social media has allowed people to develop more organic, democratic followings, both people that suck but would have gotten a platform one day, but also people that promise something more from politics, like Zoran Mamdani. Mamdani didn't just engage people on social media by clicking. He got tens of thousands of volunteers in New York to knock on doors. But the initial thing that helped him do that was social media. So I do think we can get more genuine engagement, and we should try to do that. But I think that the potential for the good here outweighs the harms of it, because I don't think the harms are unique enough. We can generate genuine engagement, but this will not happen if we leave things to established interests. They can, of course, be corrupted by social media. There may be one day when they try to turn on it. Instagram's already trying it. Check your settings, by the way. They're trying to get rid of political content. I don't think they'd be doing that if it was a good thing. So in conclusion, this motion must fail because I don't trust the alternative so much. Maybe that might change, but it must fail.
I'd like to thank all the speakers. It was a very kind debate so far, and I'd now like to call on this to address the House.
Well, it's going to be hard to follow on such great speakers. I must say I am totally unprepared for the parameters of this debate. When I was coming to this meeting and I was told I would be signing minutes, I didn't realize I'd be redefining what a Trinity wanker was. So it's interesting to hear about a world where a blue genie could regulate social media and then get reference to Otto von Bismarck in the same debate. Discovering John Pork and Porklitical is a message I will bring back to Dún Laoghaire County Council and my colleagues, because we have not had the privilege of wondering who he is. But there is a problem with social media. And that is one thing I think everyone across the political divide in Ireland can agree on. probably the only one thing that we can possibly agree on at the moment. As someone who has received death threats simply because I said Conor McGregor would not be a fit president, I think I can definitely say I'd like to see something change. But exactly how we do that is now another question, and something I think a discussion that has to be had. Regulation is so difficult, as articulated so well already, and in an ideal world, yes, if we could ban politics, but as someone of, I thought I could say young, I'm considered the young politician in Dún Laoghaire County Council, but then I come up here and I don't know who John Pork is. I feel very old, but it is a way that I engage with my generation, let's call it, probably more on Facebook, hasn't even really been mentioned. I guess that's the age group I am, but TikTok and Instagram and other things. So I don't want to give preference to one side of the debate or the other, but I do want to thank all the speakers for discussing it and the quality of your speeches, and I have no doubt, I have a feeling some of you may, though you may not want to, have to come into politics at some point to articulate those points. So I just want to say a massive thank you. And now I would like to put the question to the House on the motion. This House would ban politics from social media. All those in favour, please vote aye. Aye. All right, we might do that again because we may not be aware. Apologies, I thought everyone would be aware of how this goes. So we're going to have aye and nay. So all those in favour, please vote aye. Aye. And all those against, please vote nay. Nay. I'm pretty sure the nays have it. So